Hi, I'm Min-Kyu Jung from Ivo, and today I'm going to show you a quick crash course on how to use our assistant and repository tools. These tools can be thought of as kind of like a next generation CLM. They are built from the ground up with AI, and they help you extract important intelligence from your agreements more efficiently and effectively. Let's start with the repository. You can store your contracts in your Ivo repository. Otherwise, Ivo can sync into other data sources like Google Drive or Salesforce. The first thing you'll notice is that we have a view with these columns. Notably, these columns are created by the user but populated by AI. And unlike with traditional CLMs, you can create whatever arbitrary column you want. Perhaps you want a list of all agreements that begin with the letter C. Whatever it is, Ivo can extract that information for you. Part of what makes Ivo special is our proprietary AI repository engine, or AiRE, which automatically clusters related agreements together in a variety of ways. We can automatically cluster your contracts by underlying template without any input from you, and then flag which agreements deviate from that standard. For example, here's a contract with a deviation flagged. Click here and you'll see a side-by-side comparison showing how the language differs from the standard. This helps you focus on agreements which are more likely to be high risk. We also identify relationships between contracts. For instance, if you're looking at a contract, it's helpful to understand if there are any amendments that supersede that agreement, or if there are any related agreements that may be relevant, like an order form to an MSA. In this example, we've identified that this agreement is subordinate to the MSA, incorporates this DPA, and is a companion of this NDA. Amendments, parents, subordinates, they're all linked automatically with Ivo. Let's walk through how you create a custom view on Ivo. For example, a view of all SaaS vendor agreements that include an exclusivity provision. I'll start by clicking Create AI Field. Then I click Create Custom Field. Now I just describe what I want. Is this a SaaS vendor agreement? I can also select a data type. Ivo then reads all of our documents and evaluates whether each one fits the SaaS vendor agreement pattern. Ivo is smart enough to understand this even if the contract never uses that exact phrase. Once that's done, Ivo creates a column for assessing whether each contract is a SaaS vendor agreement, and I can narrow the view by clicking on Filters, choosing the SaaS agreement column, and setting the filter to show only documents where the value is yes. Now I'm only seeing SaaS vendor agreements. Let's go deeper. I want to find SaaS vendor agreements that also have an exclusivity provision. So I'll repeat the same process. Create AI fields, create custom field, and this time I'll write, is there an exclusivity provision? I'm going to select the data type yes, no, but I could use text and extract the exclusivity language verbatim if I wanted to. In this case, I'm more interested in whether there is an exclusivity provision and not what the contents of that exclusivity provision is. Again, Ivo reviews each contract and adds a new column, yes if it found the clause and no if not. In this case, I'm not going to add an additional filter because I still want to see all SaaS agreements, regardless of whether or not they have an exclusivity provision. I can keep this view and then export it to a CSV file. I can also click any one of these documents and go to the sources to find the exclusivity provision if I want to as well. Now let's talk about Assistant. Where Repository gives you structured insights, Assistant lets you ask free-form questions, just like you would to a colleague. Let's ask, what customer contracts do we have logo rights for? The assistant understands context, roles, and terms, even when they're not explicitly labeled. In this case, it knows who the customer is, it passes a publicity clause, and returns a list of relevant agreements with sources linked. We also support more complex reasoning-based queries. For example, we can ask, what vendor contracts include non-standard limitation of liability provisions? This is a complex question. For starters, we need to understand what your standard limitation of liability provision looks like before we can start calculating what your non-standard limitation of liability provision looks like. That means the search is going to take a little longer. The agent builds a plan, defines your standard clause, finds variations, assesses the direction of deviation, and explains why each result is considered non-standard. It even breaks down liability caps, exceptions, and comparative risk factors. That's a high-level tour of Ivo's Repository and Assistant tools. In the future, you'll be able to use Assistant to help you negotiate agreements pre-signature through our Word add-in. Ivo will start automatically generating recommendations for you based on the way you've negotiated agreements in the past. We think that this is the future of contracting tools, and we're so excited to share it with you. Thanks for watching.